So this is going to be a little series that's going to kind of train us to get better at the Wacom tablet, or even just getting used to it to start with at the, from the very, very beginning. The idea is that we're going to go over a couple different exercises to get you a little more comfortable with it, give you an idea of where some things are at in Photoshop in terms of like drawing and illustration, and hopefully kind of get us on our way to, actually making some art on these things. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on pressure sensitivity and just kind of general accuracy with the pen to start with. So before we even get into that, let's kind of look at what we have on our Photoshop world. So on the left side we have our tools. So each one of these do something a little bit different. I'll kind of cover these in different videos as well, but some of the ones we're going to kind of deal with right now are the brush tool, which is right here. We might get in a little bit into the eraser tool, and we'll also get into talk about the colors. So these are our colors. This is how you pick what you want. You notice there's two here. There's a little flippy flop corner here as well. That flip-flop kind of switches between the two colors. Whatever color is on top is the one that you're currently using. So if I'm on my eraser, I'm going to hit B for brush, and you can see I'm drawing with that. That's the color. If I flip it, I'm drawing with white, so you can't see anything. But if I double click on that color, it'll pop up and show me a whole palette of different infinite amount of colors that I can pick and choose from. You may also notice on the right side I have a bunch of swatches. Swatches are colors that have already kind of been pulled, and I can also pick from there as well. Let's switch back to my blue because I like that. At the top we have our control panel. This is called the control panel because depending on which tool you use, it switches, right? So it kind of shows us how different ways to control the tools that we're actually using. So right now I'm on a brush, so I have opacity, flow, smoothing, angles. If I switch to marquee, right, you'll see now it has a feather, a style, and a bunch of other options as well. This is our move tool, which will also be really important later down the road. But you can see as I switch between, that control panel changes. The other thing you might have noticed too is if I hover over each one of these tools, it will pop up a little, almost like a little tutorial. And so if you want to learn more about that, you can hit learn more, and it'll show you that. Couple other things real quick. You also notice on your tools there is a little down, like a little arrow in the corner. That just means that there's actually even more tools underneath of that. So if we went to, I don't know, our paint bucket, if I click and hold on that, I can also see there's a gradient tool under there, or the paint bucket tool, right? So there's lots of different things that we have in Photoshop. We're definitely not going to get into all of them. Photoshop's is a massive program that, even though I've been using it for a very, very long time, maybe 50% at the high end, just because it's constantly changing and there's so many different applications for it. Speaking of applications, there's also different layouts for Photoshop as well. So when you first get in, your layout probably is going to look a little different than mine. We can change that layout to best suit you, or you can make your own, but these are the presets that they have in here. So right now it'll probably start out by being on Essentials, which will look kind of similar to this, but we can switch to painting. So now if we think about painting, we have our brushes here, we have our swatches, right? So each one of these are just essentially just a different layout. Sometimes if stuff gets lost or gets moved, or you just can't find it that was there before, you can always hit reset painting and they'll bring it back to how it was. Or at the top we can go to Windows, and this has all the different tools in there as well. So you can be like, I want to see my gradients tool. So I click on that, and now it pops up over on the right side. So I'm going to close that for now. Another really important thing down here is this is our layers panel, or layers window down in this bottom right. You can see it says layers, and this is basically a really important tool because it allows us to work what we call non-destructively. So it means we can do our line work in one layer and then color in a different layer, and do maybe one character on one layer with a bunch of different sub layers, or even in a folder and a different character in a totally different folder, and have text on a totally different layer and folder. And so it's really important to kind of understand that, and we'll get into this a little bit more as we get later down the road. But this is a really powerful tool. It's important to kind of pay attention to what you're doing, because let's say right now if I start drawing and I'm not paying attention, I'm actually drawing on this sheet that I actually don't want to draw on, because if I erase that now or try to change my mind, you can see I'm actually just erasing my really important information, or you might end up erasing part of the drawing that you really liked and you wanted to keep. And so it's important to pay attention to our layers, because now I can go to my layer 1 and I draw, right, and it's on a totally different layer, right? So it's definitely not affecting that. And I'm actually going to lock this layer, the 0 copy layer, and so that way I will not even be able to draw on it even if I wanted to, right? It says cannot use the brush tool because this layer is locked. Alright, so what we are going to be doing is that we are going to recreate this gradient. So going from dark to mid, mid to less mid, medium to a little less medium, and then medium to light. Okay, and so what we're going to use is we're going to use our brush tool. So I can hit B, or I can go over to my brush tool and click on that. I can use my mouse, or I can use my my pencil. Okay, even though sometimes the mouse feels easier, I would recommend just trying to use your brush or your pen as much as possible, just to kind of get used to doing that. It's a little painful at first, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. So our goal for this exercise is essentially to recreate these. And so what I'm going to do, once again, I'm going to grab my brush. If you notice, my brush is too big right now, right? So as I'm drawing, it's much too big. If I go really light, I can get there, but that seems kind of a hassle. And so, oh, and before I get too far, so you notice I just made my stuff go away. I hit Control Z to make that happen. Once again, on a Mac, it's going to be Command Z, but for you guys, it's going to be Control Z. And that will make your essentially go backwards. It's an undo. So to change the size of my brush, I can hit my brackets. So left bracket is going to make it smaller, right bracket is going to make it bigger. Okay, and so I'm going to go a little right around there. That's pretty good, because as I push, once again, these are pressure sensitive, right? So if I don't push very hard, it's very thin, but then as I press harder, right, that's the thing that's kind of cool about the Wacom tablet, or just the tablets in general, because you're going to get more of that like handmade look and kind of feel to it. Another thing to kind of mention right away is, like, up at the top I have this thing called smoothing on. So that's the other thing that's really cool about digital work, is that we can get essentially assistance with our drawings and our smoothness. So like on mine, it's not too bad. If I was drawing just with my wrist, it'd be a lot more shaky versus if I draw with my whole arm. But one way to kind of help adjust that is by adjusting my smoothing. So depending on your computer and how the graphics card and all that kind of stuff, depends on, kind of says how high you can bump your smoothing. So your smoothing is essentially just going to make it smoother lines, so you're not going to get those bumpy kind of lines in it that we do when we do handmade stuff. And so you can see even with only at 40, you see my cursor is definitely in front of my line. The faster I go, the farther it goes behind it, because there's going to be a little bit of a lag to it because it's processing it. So on my computer, I don't mind being at around like a 40, or somewhere between 30 and 40. If I go up much higher than that, you'll see that the lag's even worse. It's not horrible, but there's definitely a lag involved. So I'm going to bring my smoothing down to, like I said, somewhere between 30 and 40. And that's just kind of how I feel comfortable with too. Cool. What else is there right away? Sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, I'll also zoom in and out to kind of help with my pen control. Yeah. So for you guys to zoom in and out, you can hold down Control and roll your the wheel on your mouse, and that'll bring it in and out. Otherwise, you can hold down Control and hit plus and minus, and that'll bring things in and out as well. And then Control 0 will go back to kind of like a full screen. So if I was way out and I hit Control 0, it'll pop back in. Or sometimes you guys love to do this. You're like, I can't, what's happening? Control 0, back to where we were. Okay, so let's actually get started working on that. I know that was a lot of information. And so what we're going to do is that yes. All right. Get rid of this stuff really quick. I'm going to go on my eraser by hitting E. I'm going to hit B for brush, and now I'm making sure I'm on the right layer, and I'm set to go. Okay, so I'm going to start drawing. So you can do individual lines if you want. You can kind of do squiggles a little bit. You're trying to get that dark to medium kind of look. You can practice different things if you want. See what works the best for you, but you're trying to lighten up your hand as you go. You can kind of do a combination. Okay. Heavy. Kind of lighten it up as you go. Heavy, and I want you to do your best to try to stay in the box, because once again, it's kind of about that control as well. All right, so now this next one, I'm going to start with that kind of mid look there. I'm lightening up as I go, and now we're going to go really light. To almost like nothing. You're going to see how light and thin you can get your lines on this side. Okay. So I want you to do your best to fill those boxes in, kind of similar to what we have here, and that is your first exercise. I know that's a lot of information, but that's why we're doing it on a video. So that way, if you get lost, you get confused, you can always go back and rewatch it. Once you're totally done, it should look more complete than this. You can go up to File, Save, because this is already a Photoshop file, right? We've been working in a Photoshop file, so you don't have to do Save As or rename or anything. Just make sure you hit Save. Okay. And then you're going to go back up here again and go File, Export, Export As, and I just need a JPEG for my purposes. So we can just use JPEG. That's fine. That quality. Yes, yes, yes. And then hit Export. And then it'll say, ask where you want to export it. And then you are just going to save it on the desktop for right now. And then we'll talk more about that later. Alright, hit save. And you're good to go. And move on to the next.